Hi, my name is Lance Johnson. I am the founder of Whiteboard Geeks, and I wanted to take a second to make this, we call it pre-interview video or even pre-application video. And basically, you're applying for this job. You think maybe Whiteboard Geeks is a great place to work. You think maybe we're a lousy place to work. But here's the deal. You're going to be working here for months, years, maybe decades of your life. So I figured it's worth a quick video or a not so quick video. This might go up to half an hour. Explaining exactly who we are, how we think a little bit differently than many companies, and giving you the information you need. Because look, I don't want you to waste your time. I don't want you to waste our time. I think it makes a lot more sense for you to know what you're getting into and invest a little bit of time up front and decide whether or not you even like what we're about, you like our mission, or there's something else that's a better fit. I know that there's a lot of jobs out there, and I appreciate you taking the time to look at ours. So anyway, let's just jump into it. So I just split it up into a few major areas of how we do things differently. And I think first I want to start with our bottom line. Some people call it mission. I think that, you could call it our mission as well. But basically, we've got a couple different things for clients and for employees. So, well, let me minimize this because it's just too big. Oh, goodness. There we go. So what we do at Whiteboard Geeks is we destroy PowerPoints with visual storytelling. There's too many PowerPoints in the world. We want there to be less. The way we do it is with real artists, so we don't use software drawn, which is pretty different than most of our competitors. Or they make great videos, but we found that there's something extra special about having a real live artist. And we have all American made art right now. And that's not to say we won't do something international in the future, but the benefit of this is being able to work on the same time zone more than anything. So we enjoy having US based artists because it means we can get them on the phone very easily. We can talk to people quickly and there's no time zone delay. And we're trying to take a complex idea that a client has and make it simple. You know, we're trying to give a new, we'll say a drug company or a medical device company who has something complicated. They need to explain how to kill cancer cells with a new molecule. And we are going to try to take that complicated idea and break it down into a visual analogy. So the kinds of folks we worked with, Capital One, Medtronic, SAP, Cleveland Clinic, Wells Fargo, Ethicon. Wow, that didn't come out beautifully, but hey, c'est la vie. That's not to say that there aren't smaller or bigger companies that we worked with, but we are lucky enough, really blessed enough to, since we've been around for 7 years, to have some clients that help build confidence for other people who are thinking about working with us. Because they go, oh yeah, they have projects that actually did make a difference, and they have projects with companies that aren't fly-by-night companies. So I say that just to let you know a little bit about who we worked with. All right. That's important to know, but I would argue that even more important is our bottom line for our employees. And here's why. You're going to spend a whole lot of time at work. You're going to really be shaped by who you're working with. You're going to be changed by the place you work at. And so, our clients we work with for a few months at maximum. And we have a call every week, every other week, once a month. And it's a good relationship, and I think there's a chance to impact the world positively from our client relationships. But the work that we do as employees, the work that we do as the people there on the day-to-day, that's the work that's really going to decide who you are in a big way and decide who we become too. So our heart mission, we call it, not our external mission, but our heart mission, the one inside, is to support our employees where they're being called by God. Now, I'm a Christian. I started this company in part because I wanted to be able to work with freedom and say, all right, there's things that I want to work on or things I'm not proud to work on. There's things that I think are right and things that I think are wrong. And we have people from all different walks of life. It's not even a question we ask of. I couldn't tell you what the beliefs are of many of our employees, but it's just so critical that you be able to bring your whole self to work and be able to work to be the best version of yourself. And I really can't stress that enough. That's a big heart mission of ours. that we want you to bring your whole self to work. We want you to be moving where you're called to be by God, so that you can not feel stuck and not feel like you just have to show up and punch a time clock. I mean, and a real concrete example of this is we might have an employee who wants to start a business, and we've had employees who want to start a business. That's fine. You know, in most jobs, you have to pretend like you're not working on this thing on the side and you're not hoping to leave your job eventually. Look, we are happy to be a stepping stone for you. If you learn something useful and then move on, we actually have a former employee who left to start his own Whiteboard video studio. So a direct competitor. He left to become a direct competitor. Not mad. In fact, we refer business to him when it's not a good fit for us. So this isn't just something we give lip service to. Our CEO makes short films, documentaries, and has been moving in that direction ever since she started working here. And I imagine it's just a matter of time before she finds the biggest idea or the real film that's going to take more of her time. So she says, hey, this is where God's moving me. I got to step into that. So it's important because you don't have to say, even if you just say, this is a good entry-level job or this is a good mid-level job, but I'm trying to go someplace higher that Whiteboard Geeks doesn't offer. If you want to be a huge, big example, well, there's only one CEO slot. And so if you said, I really want to run a company and there's not the growth opportunity here, no problem. Like, let's think about how we can help move you in that way. Another employee wants to do medical consulting. So we go, how can we shape your LinkedIn and the things you're working on so you could be getting in contact and build that network with people who do medical consulting. So look, if you only take one thing away from the video, it would be our heart mission is to try to help employees move to where God's calling them. So that's the big thing, that if that is exciting to you, great. If that sounds too woo-woo, if that sounds like, I just wouldn't like that, no problem. I wanted you to know up front. All right, so along those lines, and it might seem strange, but we try to structure pay so everyone is working for themselves, and they really feel like they're working for themselves. And what that means is we're all commission-based. Now, people are commission-based. There might be a slight base salary or an hourly pay. And for the job you're applying for, often we give a training time that's hourly pay. Sometimes we don't if it's more of a sales position or something like that. So the idea here, my salary is the first one to go if we're having a tough time. And actually in 2019, we had a really rough first half of the year, very little revenue. So myself and the CEO, we cut our salaries down to zero. So this isn't just something that we talk about for other people and then, rake in huge profits. I didn't get paid for a few months because we were doing poorly. And then the big thing with this, let me open it up. Big thing with this is money is feedback. So let me just give you an example. And imagine that you're managing a company for a second and you're trying to help people know when they're doing well or know when they're not doing well. And we'll say that you're a video editor, or you're managing video editor, you're managing a video team. An editor that finishes a project, or rather doesn't finish a project on time, and has their boss say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you really need to improve your performance. We're going to have to fire you," and that stings in the moment, but it kind of goes away. And it really, you can have that conversation 3 or 4 times, and it's really on the boss to make them feel that pain that the boss is feeling. The pain the boss is feeling is they don't get paid until they finish the job. Okay, and so there's a bigger level of motivation there because they really feel that. And in the same way, if there's somebody who's not finishing projects on time but getting paid on time, they're not going to get that feedback. They're kind of out of sync with reality. And so the way we structure it is, when you finish the work, or when the kind of business thing is completed, let's say when you finish a project, then you get paid on the project. When you do the work, you get paid for the work. When you close the sale and then receive the money, then you get paid for it, because closing a sale is not done until you receive the money. And that is just to give feedback. It helps cash flow. It's not like this is a purely altruistic thing. It does help it so we don't lose money if things aren't getting done. But I think even more important than that is it just helps everyone who's working see, is what I'm doing moving the company forward or not? Is this generating revenue for the company or not? Am I producing something or not? And it just gives really helpful feedback. The second part is, when you do well, you should get paid more. We don't cap earnings. It's not that an artist that cranks out, or a recruiter that really can place people very well and set many appointments with qualified candidates, that person should make more money than someone who maybe for good reasons doesn't have as good results. Maybe there's an artist who only can work part-time. That's okay. They shouldn't be penalized for, they might want to spend more time with their family and they're happy making less money. That's fine. But when you do well, you should get paid more. When you do worse, you should get paid less. And that's a real fundamental tenet of how we think about things. And I guess the other part of that, and this is the uncomfortable reality, is it's not about effort, it's not about work ethic, it's not about hustle. It's about getting good results. There's just, you can't deposit effort, you can't deposit work ethic, you can't deposit hustle. And I think when we go back up to our bottom line, it's like, well, how does that match up with this idea of a heart mission, where we want people to be like really move where they're called by God? And I think that the connection, there we go, here, is that we want to help you succeed, but we also want to help people operate in reality. And that wherever you're moving, whatever challenge you're tackling, isn't going to be easier when you leave Whiteboard Geeks. It's not going to be more helpful to ignore reality. And so we're trying to be honest, radically open, and say, here's how your actions are impacting reality. What you're doing is working. You're finishing products. You're recruiting people. You're getting jobs done, and they're generating good results, or they're not. So that's why I hope that it doesn't seem like a contradiction. But if it bothers you, I'd like you to know that up front, so then you're not deceived by anything, or like, oh man, I thought these people said they were Christian. All right, so the next big difference on us is we're a pretty decentralized company. So let me just pull this up. We need you to think like an owner. And the reason we do that is fewfold. One is we're a primarily virtual company. We have a studio in Richmond, Virginia. I'm from Richmond. I live in the Twin Cities in Minnesota now. Our CEO lives in New York. We have folks that jump into, I want to say North Carolina, but we've got a good cluster of people around Virginia, Louisiana, really spread out. And so the fact is, whether we want to or not, it's going to be a decentralized organization. And what that means is there's not going to be all the decisions made up at the top. You don't have the CEO, Cameron. She's not making every single little decision for you, or for anyone, because we're not in the office together. There's a lot of judgment calls you're going to have to make. So I wanted to give a few different thoughts on that. And I'm actually going to go out of order here. Let me move this up. And this up. Oh. There we go. All right, so we think of leaders, not managers. My goal is to not have to make anything required. There is a value. Tom Landry has that quote where he talks about how a great coach helps football players become the men they want to be by doing the things they didn't want to do. And I agree with that somewhat. I always need help to be my best self. I mean, St. Paul talks about how he does the evil that he doesn't want to do and doesn't do the good he wants to do. So there is a level of help that a leader should give. That a boss can say, like, hey, are you doing this thing? They can help hold you accountable, essentially. But as I just alluded to, working remote equals freedom, and freedom can be used for good or for bad. And so we need people who get excited about the idea, but don't need to be managed. Don't need somebody checking over their shoulder on their time clock. And I mean, many of our jobs don't have time clocks. Some of them that have an hourly base pay do have a time clock just for pay reasons. But nobody's checking the hours. Nobody is saying, oh, did you actually work that? Send me screenshots. You have a whole lot of freedom. And so we need you to be able to manage yourself I really think that at the end of the day, everyone works for themselves, especially since we're all commission based. Then it means that the work you do, actually I'm going to change that direction. The work you do is going to dictate how much you get paid, whether you get a raise. You effectively give yourself a raise by having better results come from it. So the other piece of that is, we need people who think about it like it's their problem. You show up with a solution. When there's an issue that needs to be solved, it's going to be easy to just point out that problem. And there's nothing wrong with just pointing out the problem. Sometimes there are things that really are outside of your control. But anytime you can show up with a solution, it works great. And along those lines, oftentimes we're all Googling. And what I mean by that is, when I have a question that I'm not sure how to answer, I usually have to Google it. There's a whole section on learning down here that I'll get to. But when I have to Google this thing, I go, oh man, there's a lot I don't know. I'm having to learn something new. With a small company like ours, I think we have 18 people, 10 part-time, 10 full-time, 8 part-time. But when we have this quantity of people, there's a lot of things we still don't know. And so to figure those out means a lot of Googling. We have to show up and Google a whole lot of things. And so when you have a question, it's best to start with you Googling and not asking your boss or a teammate to Google. Just try to bring that solution, try to show up Googling. So if you're expecting perfect training that has everything answered and you don't want to try to figure anything out, and that sounds like a harsh way to say it, like, oh, who wouldn't want to do that? But really, some people do very well with a process that is perfectly set and they don't have to think about and never changes. And that really does work, and that's a valuable skill in some areas. But for us, we need someone who says, I can Google that, I can look this up, I can see what that error is from, I can try to come up with a solution, rather than like, oh, I can just see if other people can answer this question, and mainly say, oh, I'm stuck until someone else solves this problem for me. I'm stuck until someone else solves this problem. This goes back to those results idea where it's going to impact if you're stuck, and even if it's like I need somebody else's help to solve the problem, then it means being a little bit noisy to get your problem solved as well. Last section on this decentralization is, we're thinking, how do people make decisions far away? And what I really would put in is budgets are bunk. What I mean by that is, you get an example project. You have a new idea for ways that we could make videos. You say, I think that chalkboard is going to be the next big thing. And so you look at it and you say, what would my budget be to make this? And here's the problem. Budgets just expand, or costs expand to meet a budget. If I say you've got $1,000 to make your chalkboard video, then you'll probably be able to make it in $1,000. If I say you have $250 to make your chalkboard video, you'll probably say I'll be able to make it in $250. The fact is, they're a little bit arbitrary. Somebody has to pick an arbitrary number. And so it's a lot better to look at each expense that a business has as an investment. And these investments they've got to stand on their own. So you go, I think that this could pay off and we could make more money than if I didn't do it. Again, that chalkboard video, I probably would try anything that costs $100. I probably would try some things that cost $1,000. I wouldn't try many things that cost $10,000. $100,000 is hiring 2 people easily, and then $1 million I wouldn't try because it's too close to the death line. We could die if we spent $1 million on something and it went bad. So we need you to think about it in terms of investments, not expenses. And not just say, hey, what's the perfect budget, but explain why, with numbers, why you should do this idea. And big part of that is because cash is oxygen for a business. We're not in this only for the money, but if we don't have the money, we're not in this. We will go out, not be able to pay any salaries if we're not careful and we're not responsible with the way we manage our cash. So please internalize this. We want to try things. We're okay spending money to try things. But I need you to think, all right, this isn't about what budget I'm given. This is about what investment I would make if this was my company. And I'm excited to take investments or take little risks on those ideas, but we really need you to not think of it in budget terms, but think of it in investment terms, just like an owner would think. Easy way to frame this is, if I was the owner of this company, what would I do in this situation? All right, so these first three are kind of the softer but really important side of the business, where, again, I want you to understand this so you know, how do we think about working together. And then these last four are a little bit, I'd say these last three actually, a little bit more nuts and bolts to show some specific examples, with this last one being almost like a glue that holds a lot of this together. And maybe I could call it numbers and clear writing, or just clear communication, since numbers is about seeing what's actually happening. And sometimes that's numbers and sometimes that's just a really honest conversation. So since people are trying to think like owners, the thing that comes out of that is there aren't a lot of ready-made solutions. There's not usually a best way. And especially with things like say appointment setting or recruiting, or even with production, where there's not a set answer. If you look at how like to look at Procter & Gamble and how they came up with some of the best formulations of their product. Essentially, they would try one version. There's a good book on this called Adapt. And they would try one version, and not just one version, actually 10 versions, and they'd see which one worked best. And they'd take the one that worked best, and then they would try 10 variations of that, see if they could keep what worked and keep making it better. And our life and a small business is very similar to that. We got to try a lot of stuff and see what sticks. So to give you some really quick examples, it would be a breakdown of what new video styles would be useful for our customers. That's not something we can know based off of our opinion or our theory. And it's actually a big problem when you have a group of people and either the boss or the people that work there, they decide something based on consensus rather than based on reality. It's just as bad if I make a random judgment call or Cameron makes a random judgment call as if the group gets together or you make a random judgment call for something that's unknowable until you try it. You don't know if somebody wants the product you're selling until you offer it to them. You don't know if somebody is going to respond and book an appointment with you until you ask them if they would book an appointment. And so it's really a level of humility of saying, all right, there's things that are unknowable until I try it. I can have an opinion on it. I can have an idea. I can think that this is an important way to do things. I can think that this would be the best. But until I get that information, then I really am just spouting an opinion. And so it's going to be difficult to make that opinion stick for our whole company. Now, what you can do, though, is run a small experiment. With this example of the video style, what new video styles would be useful to our customers? Well, we could take it, and I broke it down in orders of magnitude. For $200, I bet we could record a video with the new style. Maybe we had sand videos that I wanted to try. So we bought a sand table, and we bought some sand to do that, and then we had the artists put together a couple of videos where they were moving around sand and transforming it into different things. And that was, and it didn't work as well. People didn't seem to want it. Well, we spent less than $1,000 on testing it out, and then we knew. And and it's okay if you try one test, you try sand video test A, and you spend $1,000 and it doesn't work, but you go, I think we should tweak the color sand. We should use green sand, and then we can color key it so it looks like it's colored and add illustration almost. Or, we should do it, and that one doesn't work, so we try another experiment, and that costs another $200 or something. It's okay to spend money on experiments, and it's okay for your first experiment to fail and you to take the learnings, or just take the idea that it gives you and try another one. But it's not okay to say, we're going to make a big bet on this, and roll out an entire sales process and do a lot of things just based on opinion. So the way you can think of it is like a bet. So you could ask yourself, would I bet $100 that sand videos are going to be great? The question here is, how much money would I make if that bet pays off? Well, I would make a lot more money because we could sell each sand video at $50,000 per video. And if we have another type of style that people really like, great. So that seems like a pretty good bet. If it's $1,000 for the potential of making $50,000 sales, which would be $500,000, probably still a good bet, but not as no-brainer kind of guaranteed. $10,000, there's an opportunity cost there. Like $10,000 isn't nothing for a company like us. $100,000 is just too big for a bet for us. There's no way we'd want to take that bet because now it's got to pay off big. And if it's the first shot, then I just can't see that making a lot of sense. And $1 million, forget about it. We're too small to make $1 million bets. So that's the way you can think of it is, I've got this idea. I'd like to try something out. And please experiment. 10, 100, maybe even $1,000, but come up with little experiments to try to make your job better and get some data on it, right? Get more than just one response. Try to get a little bit more data. And there's a whole teaching that we can do on that if you have more questions. But think experiments, not opinions, is what I would say. So let's minimize this guy. Now, it really goes hand in hand with learning. A lot of learning is going to come from experimentation. But sometimes if you can really piggyback off of other people's experiments, that's the best. My thought is geeks make the best teachers. And I don't say that just because we're the geeks here, but really learning from people who are nerdy about the topic and who are doing the thing is really big. At Whiteboard Geeks, we have what are called quarterly muscle building days. And we take that time where you get to pick any course that you want. You can go on Udemy, you can come up with it. And there's somewhat of a budget limit. We don't do $1,000 courses in general. But you pick any course that you want, and then you get that day that you can do the morning, you can roll it in later. You can learn that course on your own. So we try to get those hours that's specified for everybody in the company. It's kind of like a team effort that we do that together. Now, you can do it on your own time as well, but that's just a given time where everybody's getting paid to work on it right then. There's a couple things to watch out, though, for when you're learning. There's a group of people I would say not to learn from. And basically, if the person hasn't done the thing that you want to do, they've only researched it, then it's probably not a good person to learn from. That doesn't mean they are guaranteed to have bad information, but there's a lot of things you learn once you start doing it, and a lot of things you miss until you start doing it. Some things that are obvious when you do it, but you didn't really capture at first. And I can say that from experience. There's things that I've learned about superficially, and then there's things I've learned about from doing. There's a big difference between those two. And that same way, pop science has its place, but I wouldn't give it too much weight. A great example of this might be reading a book on persuasion if you are a salesperson. So you'll read a book by Robert Cialdini called Influence. It's a classic. Everybody loves the book. But it's more pop science. It's trying to apply things from a lab setting or a couple stories to the real world. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's nothing wrong with getting ideas to then run experiments from. Let me zoom back in. You could take that and say, all right, I want to run an experiment based off of this pop science book that I just read and see if it holds true. But it's not a good idea to take that as gospel. You're not skipping the experimentation phase with either of these two steps. Generic sites or blogs are also generally unhelpful because, again, the person hasn't done the thing. So there's many ideas that sound good in theory that just aren't very helpful. So let me just show you an example. It would be, all right, so let me show you an example. Let's say that we want to look at how to book appointments. We'll say how to book B2B appointments. Let's just see what kind of results we get. All right, we've got the ads up there. All right. The Center for Sales Strategy, 6 tips to help you secure business appointments. So if I'm looking at a general website that has kind of high-level tips, then I'm probably going to stay away from it. It could be helpful, but it usually makes me think, they're not really specific on this issue. This is just content to try to rank high in the search engines. And this content's not wrong per se, but there doesn't look like there's a whole lot of helpful information. For instance, use LinkedIn to not only connect with the decision maker, but to join groups. Okay, yeah, that's true. But what we'd like to see, I think a good way to figure it out is are there screenshots showing me, let's look at this one. Are there screenshots showing me what to do step by step? Or do I see other content on this site that makes me think this is really concrete? Okay, here we go. Like I said, we've got screenshots. And that's just it's always a sign to me that there is something actually being done here. The person is doing the thing. It's a tactic that they're showing us. It's not a theory. Because so many things sound good in theory but don't work at all in real life. So stay away from general or generic sites or blogs. I'd also say courses that are too big or questions that are too broad go together. Imagine we wanted to look on Udemy and there's a course by Seth Godin. Yeah, the Seth Godin's freelancer course. I'm sure it's a great course, but it's generally just too broad to learn something useful. You can come away from it and it can kind of hype you up, but it leaves a whole lot of space where you don't know any of the strategy piece. It might be very highly rated. I bet you would enjoy a course like this. This kind of course seems fun. I like going through courses like this. But it doesn't give, again, are there screenshots showing exactly how to do these things? Are there examples of writing, or are there any things to work through that are going to be used immediately? And if not, it's probably just either too broad of a question, or it's maybe helpful at the beginning of the journey when you're trying to make sense of the space or come up with a basic strategy. But I think broad courses aren't very helpful. I think even more helpful might be how to get clients as a freelance. That might be a better search. Let's see what would come up from that. Oh, this is even better, more specific. Beyond Upwork, how to find freelance clients outside of Upwork. So, if we had at the top level, let me even just put this on the mind map. If we had on the top level, how to be a freelancer. And then we had how to get clients. And then we had how to get clients on Upwork. Then a sibling of that would be how to get clients off of Upwork. So when you can define a problem a lot clearer like this, it's going to go much further on getting you a good answer. And so the more specific you can make it, the better. But when you have something super general or generic or too big, I don't think that I would really stick with it. My other rub would be if the person doesn't do the thing that you're doing right now or in the recent past. If they are selling a course or they wrote a book or they did this thing 10 years ago, that's one thing. I really like books written by people who are trying to get clients. They explain their system and they say, this is the system we use and we can do it for you and here's how much we charge. I like that a lot because usually the system that they show is something that they are actively using. And then they're just giving people the opportunity to learn how to do it, realize it's a lot of work, and get it done for them. Same thing with courses. I don't generally like courses or areas to learn that the person maybe did the thing 10 years ago. And we'll go back to the Seth Godin thing. Seth Godin does not work in freelancing. The guy has a very different business model. And so his course probably says some interesting things, but I wouldn't see that as very relevant to learning anything about getting clients for a freelancer. Now, I use that example. We're not freelancers. It's not something that we necessarily need to worry about, but just use that as an example. So that takes us to where I would learn from. My first place to check for content of practitioners, people actually doing the thing, is YouTube, which I was shocked at, but I'll show you a couple examples. Let me see if I have this one here. Yeah, a good example of this is hiring funnel. This video changed how I looked at hiring in a big way. Where you look at Noah Kagan has got this great
Facebook ad.
Oh, let me get through this. Noah Kagan has this great setup of how to automatically filter folks for hiring and different things you can go through. It's a 6-minute and 30-second video, but he's showing you, again, screenshots. He's showing you details of how he does this thing. The same thing might be like, if I wanted to improve my my animation skills, I'd be like, animation, we'll say animation, or maybe I'll just want my Illustrator skills to get up. Adobe Illustrator tutorials. This is going to be a really helpful place because we've got something that is going to show us, create a vector logo from a rough sketch. Perfect. This is going to show us screenshots. It's going to show us things that we can do and we can imitate so we can learn how to do it ourselves. So YouTube is a great place. Facebook groups are shockingly good as well. Let me just take you to the Facebook groups that, let's say for getting appointments on LinkedIn, I would look on Facebook, and when I look on here, let's go. Just have this little pause. And when I look on here, it's really neat because I can go on my search and I just say LinkedIn appointment setting. Let me pull up groups. And this is one that I know something about since I had already joined. Well, let's say LinkedIn. Let's just try it at LinkedIn. All right, LinkedIn growth hackers. And it tells me how many unread posts they have. It also will say for the groups that you're not joining, it's the number of posts a day. So I like to find multiple posts a day rather than posts per week, these ones that I joined. But when you join these free groups, what you'll see is really interesting because people will come up, and sometimes, again, they're trying to sell something, but they give tactics that are working for them, or they give results that are working for them. Let's see if we can find anything here. And some of these groups are less effective than others. Let me go back and see if I can find something in this other LinkedIn Growth Hackers one. Okay, yeah, this is a really helpful thing. So I see it scrolling through, and this person wants me to comment growth in order to send me their system that worked really well. It shows concrete numbers, 72% acceptance rates, 49% positive replies on follow-up, 40+ book demos a week. And so you go, this is helpful. So I would comment growth, and then they'll message it to me later. But you want to look for places where somebody can point to numbers they got recently, very recently. And it's surprising the number of opportunities there are on like Facebook to learn from people who are actually doing this stuff. Forums are another option. I didn't bring up any of these. Stack Overflow is the first thing that comes to mind for programming. There's a website called Stack Overflow where people answer specific, very specific questions. I know for video editing and a lot of design or production things, there are also forums where you ask a question, people answer your question for free. Books, I think, I should have moved this up a little bit. I think books are great for strategy or high-level topics. So if you're trying to think through strategically, perfect. Check that out. But if you're looking for the tactics, like, again, how to get appointments, occasionally there will be a good book on doing the thing. There's a book called How to Book a Meeting with Anyone, and that's great on appointment setting. A good example of courses, they can be terrific for specific skills, like that one we saw earlier of how to get clients off of Odesk. Or if you're just starting from zero. I think this one was a good example. Excuse me. Excuse me. This was a great example because you've got a whole set of sections that give you a really big idea, which is I want to learn Python, and break it down and help you get a little bit, the best way to put it, maybe like a little bit oriented in the space. If you don't know anything about the space, it can be a really good idea to start in a big overall course like this. But again, look for somebody who's doing it. Look for someone who is a programmer. Don't look for someone who was a programmer and now gives motivational speeches about programming. It's not to say that person's bad, but it's probably not going to be the same quality, and it's not going to be very updated information. The last one that I would say is just blogs. As I said in the not to learn from section, generic blogs are lousy, but if you look for specific blogs, they can be great. So this one, hrefs, you'll get a feel for whether or not somebody is writing it because they are a content creator, and I put that in hashtags, or because they're actually a practitioner who does this stuff. So if you look at this, it says he's the communications manager and skilled writer. And honestly, when you're looking for information, you don't really care if they're a skilled writer or not. You just want the information. And so the best thing to do is find a practitioner who knows that information and really had to do the thing, not just went to other blogs and is summarizing it for you or using techniques. Now, I don't know about this person. If they actually run a test, then that can be very helpful. So this looks like could be a useful one, even though it's written by more of a professional writer. And it gives an idea of what experiment you could do. It gives some email services. It shows which ones succeeded and which ones didn't. Email permutator, Twitter's advanced search. So that could work. I think even more than that, I like, there was this one, criminally prolific. This person is a guy who actively has done PR outreach in order to grow his business. So this person has got a big vested interest. Like they have a payoff if they make it work. They lose something if they don't make it work. So they have more skin in the game. I would be much more likely to want to hear from this person than somebody who's just a paid writer. And he's trying to sell his course, which is fine with me. I don't mind somebody selling me a course as long as they still have to do the thing that they're teaching. So that's it for examples. All right, we're doing great. Yeah, so I hope that this is giving you a good idea of how we're working. We got 2 more sections, and the learning section was a long one. But again, if this stuff seems exciting to you, you're like, oh, finally, somebody's speaking my language. This is the way I like to learn. This is the way I like things to work. Oh, praise the Lord. I'm glad that you're here. If you're like, this sounds awful, I do not want to be part of that, that's great too. Saving yourself the time, saving yourself the hassle. So here is the tech basics one. And the thing is, we don't live in a time where just being able to send an email or use Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel are enough anymore. Now there's additional tech skills, and we're a little bit harsher than a lot of companies because really, as a small company, there's no reason why you should be stuck doing hours of busy work. There's no reason why you should be forced to deal with repetitive tasks that could be automated. But at the same time, we don't have a big programming team. I know a little bit of programming. We don't know a ton of programming. And so we really try to leverage tools, and I mean leverage is a fancy word of saying we try to use it, and so we don't have to do something else, like use a tool like Zapier that integrates with Google Sheets, that integrates with your email, that integrates with a form, so that if you're, let's say you're a recruiter and doing a hiring funnel, that you don't have to sit there and do the entire thing by hand. You don't have to spend your time on the piece that a machine could do just as well. We want you to do the things that only a person could do. you're going to get hundreds of applications, and you need to send them the same application email from Indeed. Well, that's a perfect thing for a computer to do. So we need you to be on the lookout for useful tools and be interested in learning them. Anytime you see a repetitive task that you're like, oh, I'm going to have to do this over and over and over, we got to look at it and see what the other options are. And maybe it's a filter in Gmail. Maybe it's dealing with or creating a text expander. So text expanders, you can see, I'll just show you one expander for Chrome. Auto text expander, yeah, we have folks that use this on our outreach team. And what it does is you type a small phrase. Oh yeah, it's already on here. So you type a small phrase, kind of like your keywords. Let's see where my text expander is. And then you don't have to deal with it. There it is. Okay, let's see what my shortcuts are. Oh yeah. So APT1. I need to get to, let me see where I could type in text. So when you type it in, then it drops in the text that you have set here. Not crazy, but it just will help you save a lot of time. So when you find that you're doing something over and over again, then it's a good idea to make a template. And we really need people who think about the ways that they can make their work more efficient. Because we're a small company, we just can't afford to have tons of time spent doing things that really a computer could do, or doing things that could be done a lot easier. I mean, it's just, I don't think outreach is that different. There are a couple sections that I might follow up on and have to, this is my template, so I know I'm gonna have to change this. I know I'm gonna have to change name, but I only type 2 things versus typing this whole thing or going to another window and copy pasting. Like, just takes way longer. So I need you to be looking for tools like that. Then there's if this then that, IFTTT, Zapier, Microsoft Power Automate to integrate things. And that's where I'm talking about with the idea of, like, we have a hiring funnel or you have somebody filling out a form. We are using Zapier to integrate things excuse me, on this hiring funnel. And so it's just like, how can we make the human time matter and then the machine time run in the background without having to worry about it? How can we let you do that on your own to make your life easier? Then Google Sheets or Airtable, that's just kind of a place that you can keep data. But the big idea here is think about automating. And this stuff is going to be just as basic as working with Microsoft Excel or working with Microsoft Word. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, people said, oh yeah, computer skills were required on a resume, or on a job post, because it was seen as a novel thing to actually have computer skills. And today it's strange that we have to, today we have to say, all right, Zapier or Power Automate or if this then that, like those skills you're going to be required to learn. But in 10 years, I don't know if it'll be these companies, but people are going to be used to stitching together automations. So the last section that kind of ties everything together is, how do we communicate in business? How do we get ideas across? And clear writing is one of them, video is another, but a big part of this is understanding numbers. When we go back to the experimentation phase, everybody needs to have an understanding of what a good experiment was and what a bad experiment was. And you see that based off of how much money you spent and how much money you expect to get back. These aren't crazy things, but we also could put it in the thinking like an owner section. You need to be able to look at what we're doing and do your own math behind it in simple ways, and just have the business make sense to you. In order to think like an owner, in order to see if an experiment works, in order to see if it's worth automating, in order to learn something useful, we need you to think about how you would spend your money, how you would bet your money, how you would bet your time, how you would bet other people's time. And the only way you can do that is if you have a little bit of a grounding in numbers. We have some company meetings that do things like that. So for instance, we'd ask a question of, each appointment's worth $2,000 to our sales team. and we want to make $300,000 this month. So how many appointments do we need to get? And some people would see a word problem. They go, it's a word problem. I give up. I'm not doing this. And that's okay. There really are positions that don't need to have any understanding of numbers or any arithmetic abilities. But this is a position that whether you're an artist or whether you're a recruiter, we need you to be able to think through how the business works. In the same way that all of you are going to have to do enough math to figure out, your salary or figure out your personal budget, we need you to be able to do enough math to think through what your actions do to the business. So 300,000 divided by 2,000 is 150 appointments. So if we want $300,000 in revenue, we need 150 appointments. And these aren't hugely complicated calculations or something, but just we need you to not be afraid of it. And then, in the numbers side, you can figure out a whole lot based off, we'll go back up to this bet idea. For every dollar that we make, we're going to keep, after paying everybody's salary, after paying all our expenses, anywhere between 10 cents and 30 cents. And 30 cents is a bit on the high end. So people will hear that there's a $10 million a year company, and they're keeping probably closer to $1 million. I would be shocked if they're keeping closer to $3 million. Or there's a company that is, if you're making $1.5 million a year, then 10% of that's only $150,000. 30%, is $450,000. And so you can look at an idea. If you spend, if you expect that you're going to make $100,000 in profit, and you take a $100,000 bet, you just wiped out all your profit. If you spend $10,000 on a bet, then you just spent 10% of your profit, 1/10 of your profit. And so when you're thinking through experiments and when you're thinking through ideas, you can use these little rules of thumb to help you think through it. All right, so why does this matter? Why would I have you go through a 50-minute long talk at the beginning of a hiring funnel? Well, again, I really hope that you're going to love working here. And I hope this gave you an idea of how we work, the ways we think. And I hope this was exciting, that you said, oh, this is the way I would like to work too. These things are all in support of the bottom line, and again, especially the bottom line for employees. My goal as the owner of the company is to support you in moving wherever you're called by God. I think that these tools are really important to do that. We need you to, we really need you to embrace and be excited about how things work here. And so I hope that's you. I really hope that this has been clearer. I hope that I see you on the other side and that you decide this is worth applying for. But if you don't, I respect that a lot. And thank you for sticking with this video. Maybe you learned something even if you don't decide to work with us, but I really feel blessed to have gotten to at least reach you virtually, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye now.